They're voting today on a bill to block President Obama's executive order on immigration. Peter Barnes is with us. All right, Peter. Guaranteed, this bill sails through the House, but it's not going to stop this executive order, is it?
It will not, Stuart. The House will approve the Preventing Executive Overreach on Immigration Act of 2014 along party lines today, and the bill will promptly die in the Senate, where soon-to-be ex-Majority Leader Harry Reid has said he will not bring it up, so it is largely a symbolic vote to allow the president's critics to get on the record on this issue, Stu.
So, in this lame duck Congress, no action can or will be taken which will stop the executive order on immigration. That is the bottom line as of right now, isn't it?
Not as long as the Democrats control the Senate, and even then, if it were to pass, the president would veto it.
Got it. All right, Peter, thanks very much indeed. You've dealt with the legislature and their input on the executive order on immigration. Now let's deal with the legal, the judiciary side of it. Texas Governor-elect Greg Abbott, he's leading a 17-state coalition suing the Obama team for taking executive action on immigration. Now, this is a bipartisan group of states. It's mainly those that share a border with Canada and Mexico. All rise, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano is here. Judge, okay, so this is the legal approach. Sue the administration and say, 17 states say that's illegal. You can't do that. Okay, I got it. But I'm sorry to say, Judge, I think it's meaningless. By the time you get any decision out of the courts, 2 years have gone by, the executive order is implemented, and you cannot reverse it. This is pointless.
Here's the, I think largely what you say is probably what will happen, Stuart, but here's the argument that Attorney General, Governor-elect Greg Abbott will make. First of all, he is the country's foremost authority on states suing the federal government. In his 8 years as Attorney General of Texas, he sued the federal government 31 times. Now, some he wins, some he loses, and some are not yet resolved. But his theory is the federal government is unlawfully forcing the states to spend money on, and fill in the blank, hospital beds, emergency rooms, schools, police, fire, all the things that government spends its money on to service people who are here unlawfully, who don't produce into the system economically or by paying taxes. Believe it or not, that is an argument that has worked with the court. When the states can show that the federal government has sort of taken their sovereignty away from them by forcing them to do something that they have not voluntarily agreed to do, under those narrow circumstances, the federal courts have interceded. So, but this is a difficult road for Governor-elect Abbott to proceed along.
Well, he started. Now, take me, real fast, take me through the legal process, because my premise is that it's going to take years.
All right, here's why it may not take years, Stuart. It takes years litigation is a model that is often the case when there's discovery involved, when each side's got to get, thousands of pages of documents from the others, and the lawyers are too busy, and everybody's delaying everything. Or when there's a demand for money, and the court has to figure out how much money. That's not the case. Governor-elect Abbott and the others are merely asking a federal judge to examine the executive orders, which exist in writing, to examine the statute, which exists in writing, to examine the Constitution, your favorite document, which obviously exists in writing, and to decide whether or not these executive orders impermissibly burden the states. Theoretically, a judge could do that in about 2 or 3 weeks of work. And Governor Abbott may very well have an answer on this before he's the governor of Texas, which takes place next month.
I mean, look, I know, you know more about this than I do, but you know that any decision is going to be appealed, appealed, and appealed, and appealed, and appealed, and appealed.
Here's why it may not matter, and this locks into the piece you just did with our colleague Peter Barnes. The president is so lawless. If the legislation the House is going to pass today were to become law over his veto, and not likely mathematically, but let's just say hypothetically what happened, what assurance do we have that he would obey that legislation when he doesn't obey legislation that was on the books before he became president? Then, fast forward to this, Judge, what assurance do we have that he would even listen to a federal judge?
If he didn't do that, if he didn't listen, then his party and he would pay a political price. And that's the important point. Judge, I'm sorry, I know we've got limited time, so I'm going to move on to one other issue here. Bear with me, please.
Please do.
There's a lot of talk today about the grand jury decision not to indict the police officer who put Eric Garner in a chokehold in New York City. Garner was caught illegally selling cigarettes on the street, Staten Island. Senator Rand Paul says this story has a lot to do with cigarette taxes. Bear with me, Judge. Listen to this for a second. This is Senator Rand Paul said this. Some politician put a tax of $5.85 on a pack of cigarettes, so they're driven cigarettes underground by making them so expensive. Well, Judge, Rand Paul, he goes on to say, look, so the police are told to go and arrest these people, and that's why you have this kind of thing happening. What's your take on what Senator Paul had to say?
Well, my initial take is leave it to Varney and company to find an economic angle to almost any story, and my hat is off to you and your producers for having captured Senator Paul saying this on another network. Here's the taxes in New York City on a pack of cigarettes. I'm not a smoker, but I had this research done this morning. The feds take $1.01 a pack. The city takes $1.50 a pack. The state of New York takes $4.35 a pack. The taxes are more than, when added up, federal, state, and local, are more than the product. So there obviously is an incentive to go underground, and I think Senator Paul makes a very, very, very strong argument. Taxes are too great. The poor people who smoke, look, they shouldn't smoke. Nobody should smoke, but it's a lawful product, will be driven to buy cigarettes from people like this fellow Garner, who probably was providing a much-needed service for the poor in his neighborhood when the police took his life.
Judge, that's a very interesting sidebar angle, if I can put it like that. Judge, thanks a lot. We appreciate you being with us. You've got 10 seconds.
Yeah, I'm doing this big time on my show today. It's a huge economic story. Huge. Beyond those cigarettes, a 40-year-old man with kids selling loose cigarettes for an income. This is a gigantic story about progressive policies that have crushed poor people. If you smoke 10 packs of cigarettes a week in New York City, over 18 years, that's $120,000 that you could not send your kids to college, and half of that went to states and federal governments. So it is a huge economic story of how cigarette taxes, gas taxes, all these things, all these places where they brag about higher minimum wage and how we care for the poor, but how their policies really have crushed the poor and kept them down.
That's fascinating, Charles. It's very,
I put a lot of work into this last night.
Yeah, you did. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks.